Hey, gorgeous! Welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast with Holly Worton, which combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business. This podcast features solo shows with Holly and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now, here's your host, Holly Worton.
Hello, and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 217. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about something that we're not talking about enough. The fact that it takes time to build a platform. The fact that it takes time to build a business, it takes time to leverage your visibility, it takes time to build a business that's bringing in a steady stream of clients. Now, there are ways to supercharge that, and I'm also going to talk about that because I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but I think it's really important to recognize the fact that overnight success is not overnight success. It's often the result of someone showing up consistently, getting visible on a regular basis, in a consistent basis, building their platform, and then all of a sudden it's like they hit the tipping point and boom, we all know who they are. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And before we get into today's episode, I want to mention a couple of podcasts that I've recently been a guest on. Not so recently, this is going back to a couple months ago, but I was a guest on my friend Cara Wild's podcast, The Way of the Sensitive, and I was the first person in her Interview the Guide series. So that was really exciting. You may have seen this already on my website, but if you haven't, I will share the link in the show notes for this episode, and you can find it there. She has a great episode, so if you are the kind of person who consider yourself to be sensitive, that's not a dirty word, that's not a bad thing, and that's something that I have taken years to come to terms with. I am sensitive, I always have been, and when I was a kid, people used to say that to me, don't be so sensitive. And I just grew up thinking that was a bad thing, but it's not, because being sensitive can open you up to new levels of intuition and empathy that make you a great coach or make you great at whatever business it is that you do. So I highly recommend Cara's website. Again, link in the show notes. About that time, I was also interviewed by Shelby Forsythia, who was recently a guest on the podcast, and we talked about grief. And you may have seen her recently in the podcast talking about how to overcome or how to move forward from grief in business. That was episode 214. Back in July, I was a guest on her podcast talking about grief. And I told aspects of my story that I don't normally talk about. And I've gotten really, really good feedback from this episode. So I highly recommend that you check it out. That episode is a good way of seeing just how far I have come, not just in my business, but in my life, who I am, and what I'm doing. Now, I go back and I tap into some really dark places in my past, and so that'll give you a good idea of just how far I've come, which I think is really useful if you're on this business journey and thinking, where am I in comparison to other people? Because a lot of times I play that comparison game too. I really kind of get down on myself thinking about how disappointed I am in myself compared to where some of my colleagues are. And then I hear myself telling stories like the stories that I told on Shelby's podcast, and I remind myself of just how far I've come. And I also remind myself of the fact that my business hasn't always been the number one priority. I've had a lot of healing to do over the last few years, and that, to be honest, has been the number one priority, because I think that healing the stuff that you hear about in that podcast episode has been the foundation of me rebuilding my business and my life over the last few years. So couldn't be where I am today in my business without doing the healing work that I've had to do. So that's it for where I've been hanging out on other people's podcasts. So let's talk about today's topic. It takes time to build a platform. It takes time to build a business. Like I said, I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer with this, but the reality is a lot of people are believing all those people who say you can build a 6-figure business in 6 months and you can do everything super fast. Yeah, some people can and some people have, but it's not the experience for most people. And why is that? I think one of the number one reasons why people don't build their business as quickly as they like is because they're still really struggling with the visibility thing. Now, this week in my business, I've been focused on the Redefining Visibility 7-day adventure, where I've been working with people to figure out how they want to be visible in their own way. So not following the marketing gurus, not following what people say you should do, but rather following your own personal blueprint that you have put together based on what you want and what works for you and what feels right for you. Because I really think the secret to visibility is not just being consistent, but being unique and being your unique self. And that is something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. And I think that's another one of the big differences between the people who get out there and start generating a steady stream of clients quickly and apparently easily, and the people who struggle. It's because they don't have a problem getting out there and getting visible. And so if you do have a problem with visibility, that's something else that, is going to make you take longer, and it's going to require work. So before I get into this a little bit more, I wanted to say that the reason I decided to do this episode today was that it was inspired by a story that a business friend of mine, Debbie, told me. She sent me an email about it that she posted in my Facebook group about how she had met up with someone in her local area who used the same technique that we use, Psych-K. And they'd met up to do practice day, and somehow she started talking about me and my Facebook group, and the guy said, "Oh wait, Holly Worton? I watch her YouTube channel." And she thought that was so funny that two of them knew me through different avenues, and she said, "Well, I think you must be famous now." And that really made me laugh, because that to me is one of the great signs of the fact that I am showing up and being visible consistently in a unique way. And over the years, because I've had different incarnations of my business for the last 6 years, almost 7 years, since the beginning of 2011. And while yes, I have kind of rebooted my business over those years, and I've actually had to start fresh with a lot of my social media platforms, I have been doing videos on this particular YouTube channel for probably the last 3 years. And while I'm not necessarily consistent on that channel, I have been getting out there, and I know I have gotten clients from there. So it's clear that that effort is paying off. But again, that's been consistent sort of effort over the last few years. So it takes time to get visible, it takes time to get noticed, and you've got to be consistent, or reasonably consistent, but you've got to show up on a regular basis. If you've been following this podcast for any length of time, you may notice that I have been doing this every week for the past 4 years now, 217 weeks. Actually, the podcast, as I've said before, is the only thing that I've really been consistent with for a long time. The videos have been kind of on and off, and blogging is on and off, but this is the thing that I have been consistent with. So that's why it's so important to start early with this stuff. Start now. Don't put it off till tomorrow. Don't put it off until you're perfect or until you have your next diploma or certificate or whatever. Get started now. And that is one of the things that I did with my coaching business. Before I even trained as a coach, when I was just starting to think about getting started in coaching, I started my website and I started a blog, and I just started blogging about personal development related stuff. And then I blogged all the way through my first coaching certificate, and then the main coaching training that I did, and my NLP. And I blogged before I knew I had a niche, before I knew what the niche was. I blogged. Not every day, but I was getting out there, I was getting consistent. That blog got noticed. This was back when I was blogging on WordPress.com, and I don't know if WordPress still has this, but they used to have this thing called Freshly Pressed, where they would pick what they considered to be an interesting blog post from their community and feature it on their website. And so I had this blog post called, it was 10 ways to focus. I don't know what it was. I don't even remember now. It was like the top 10 ways to reduce distractions and get things done or something like that. And this was probably still the biggest blog post on my blog because it got so many views in like a 24-hour period. It was amazing. And that was where I got my first followers to my blog and to my business. And that's how I met people that I'm still following and connected with online. So that's why you've got to start now. You've got to start before you think you're ready. You've got to start because you're good enough. If you want to do a podcast, you can speak. You know how to speak. You can just get a microphone and speak. If you want to do videos, same thing. All you need is a microphone or your phone and you can speak. If you can write, I'm sure you know how to write. You don't have to be a perfect writer. You can just start a blog. And the way you get good at these things is by doing it. My podcast today at episode 217 is not what it was with episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4, episode 5. I have improved as a podcaster. I have improved as an interviewer. This podcast has gotten better over the last 217 episodes. My writing has gotten better over the last, I don't know how many blog posts that I've done. Wait a second, let's check. Let's stop so you know. So I've got 716 blog posts on my blog, and that includes the 217 podcast episodes. And that also includes blog posts that I've done for my previous businesses, Travel Publishing and Socially Holistic. But so removing those 217 blog posts, that's about 500 blog posts. And that doesn't include the, I don't know how many blog posts I wrote in the years before I started my business, which were about 4. So I started blogging in 2006, started this website now, 2011. So I was blogging for about 5 years there, just personal stuff. So that's why you need to start, so you can get good at it through doing it. Don't wait to be perfect before you start, because the way you're going to get good at it is by doing it. And no one expects you to be perfect. So I was recently running, as I've mentioned, the Redefining Visibility Challenge. And that... I called it a challenge when I was calling it an adventure before. Basically, it's 7 days of exploring how you want to redefine visibility and show up as you. And that visibility adventure or challenge, if you like, was not perfect. It didn't go perfectly. And I actually posted something about this in the Facebook group about how I really liked that it wasn't perfect. So despite the fact that I'd blocked out time in my schedule to check in the morning, check in the afternoon, there were things that came up. I was out of the office on more than one of those 7 days, which meant that sometimes I didn't get to respond to people until really late. And that was not what I planned. So, not perfect. Internet went out one morning at my house. I had to do the video from my phone rather than from my computer with my beautiful backdrop. That wasn't perfect. On one of the days, I forgot to connect my microphone properly, which meant that I spoke for 5 minutes doing a live video. No one could hear me until finally someone turned up and said, something's wrong because I can't hear you. Not perfect. I stumbled over my words. Nothing about that was perfect. It was the best I could do. It was great. I'm still getting great feedback from it, but it wasn't perfect. So get rid of any perfectionism stuff that you may have, because you're not going to be perfect. Nothing you do is going to be perfect. So just do the best you can, make it good enough, and you will show up and improve over time. So that's why you've got to start now. Today. Start now. Now, like I said, I don't want to be really negative with this. The reality is you need to show up, you need to be consistent, you need to be unique, you need to get over your perfection stuff, and it takes time. So what are some of the things that I see the bigger names doing, the people who seem to have supercharged their visibility in building their platform? I think those people have made their business a number one priority. They have made it happen because they had to make it happen, or because they wanted to make it happen, or they were determined to make it happen. But I'm going to guess that if you're struggling with your business, you have not made your business a number one priority. Number one over all else, over whatever else you have going on in your life. If you're going to supercharge your business, it's got to be number one, I think. Other things you can do is do the big scary stuff. So send out individual emails to people, inviting them to look at your website, to look at your stuff, to work with you, to have a session with you, to please recommend you to other people if they have friends who might be interested in what you're doing. Sending out those individual emails. emails. When you're just getting started, sending emails to everyone you know, family and friends. A lot of people aren't going to do that because it feels icky. It feels scary. It triggers your visibility crap, but that's one way to supercharge. Once you've got an email list, another thing you can do is sending individual emails to each person on your list, personalized if possible, if you've connected with these people online and you know them. Lots of people aren't going to do that because it takes time. It's scary, but that's another way you can supercharge your business and your visibility. Joint ventures. A lot of the people that you see online who have supposedly or apparently had overnight success have done it by doing joint ventures with business friends who have much bigger lists. So they've done an affiliate thing, launching their online program or their services or whatever, giving a big affiliate payout to people who have a bigger list and are willing to promote them to the list. That is a really easy way of supercharging your business and your visibility. I know more than one person who has built their business on the back of doing joint ventures with people. Now, again, lots of people don't do that because that's scary. You've got to reach out to people. You might get rejected. But rejection is a part of business. And if you're not willing to be rejected, then you're probably not going to be able to step up there in the bigger ways that you need to do in order to build your business and get visible in a big way. You've got to be willing to get in front of big groups, whether it's speaking, whether it's big Facebook groups, whether it's doing webinars. You've got to be willing to get in front of bigger groups of people. And that includes, like we said with the joint ventures, delivering a big webinar to someone else's bigger audience. There are so many other things you can do to supercharge your visibility, but it all boils down to doing the scary stuff, identifying the big stuff that's going to get you out there, get you being visible, and doing the scary stuff. And so this all boils down to, are you willing to do what it takes to get visible, to build your business? Not everyone is, and that's why so many people struggle to build their business and they take so much time to build a platform. Now, one interview that I keep pointing out lately is an interview that was done with Marie Forleo. It's on the Mixergy podcast. So it's mixergy.com and it's an interview with Marie Forleo called Rich, Happy, and Hot, Building a Profitable Lifestyle Business. And I will share the link to this in the show notes. But in this, Marie Forleo basically talks about how she had a job for the first 8 years that she was running. I mean, she really wasn't running her business. It was just kind of a newsletter that she had going on the side, and she had multiple jobs during this period, and she was just sending out consistent emails. So she was slowly building a platform, and then boom, she's launched B-School to a very engaged list that she had been building for 8 years. Again, she was building this list for 8 years before she actually sold them something. And she was showing up, she was being consistent, and she was doing what it takes so that when she was finally ready to create a product and launch it, she was ready. So again, are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to stick it out for the long haul? And for some people, yes. The answer is yes. For some people, the answer is no. And that's why I think it's so important not to quit your day job right off the bat. Because if you're new to business, you might not know whether you're the kind of person who's ready to stick it out for years, whether you're ready, willing, and able to put in the work, to be visible, to get through your mindset stuff. So, if you've got a side job or a day job or a full-time job, part-time job, whatever, keep it until things are going well enough that you can replace your job income with your business. Because not everyone does. And some people quit their business to go back to their day job. But that always makes me really sad, because I think if you had kept that day job or kept that part-time job and just built your business in your spare time and been consistent at it, consistent, eventually it's going to work out. But you've got to put in the time, and you've got to be willing to do what it takes. Even if you do it slowly. Slow and steady works too. You don't have to be an overnight success. Most people are not. So what does it take to build a platform and to create a successful business? It's probably a whole podcast episode in itself, but let's say it takes steady action, consistent action, being willing to stand out from the crowd, being willing to be unique, being willing to be visible in a unique way, being willing to show up every day, every week, every month, every year until you make it work. It takes action and it takes mindset work. So I'm always talking about spiral staircase of business where you take one step of action, one step of mindset work, one step of action, one step of mindset work, and that's how you get up the spiral staircase of business. I think it's really important to combine mindset work with the action because it makes it easier. It makes it less scary. It makes you more likely to take the action. It makes it more pleasant. It makes it more pleasurable. It makes it just such a better experience. So when I say do the mindset work, this means getting clear on your mind crap, getting clear on what's holding you back, getting clear on your blocks, getting clear on your limiting beliefs, getting clear on all the stuff that you're procrastinating on and why you are procrastinating on them. Getting clarity on all this stuff so that you can do the mindset work, which is transforming your beliefs at the subconscious level, at the energetic level, releasing energy blocks, using whatever technique you like. So for years, as you may know, I've been using Psych K. I'm now working with heart-centered energy work, both with myself and with clients. I still work with Psych K because sometimes I feel like working from the mind, kind of with really specific belief statements, and sometimes I feel like doing the energy work. So find the thing that works for you and use it, whether that's training in a technique with yourself or working with someone else. And I think there's a lot of benefit to approaching mindset from both ways. So I do mindset work with myself on a regular basis, not a daily basis, but definitely at least once a week. And I go through phases with that. Sometimes I go a couple of weeks without doing anything, and sometimes I'm doing stuff like every day or every other day. So it's not always the same. Sometimes I've got more urgent stuff to work on, or I'm digging up more stuff, or I'm becoming more aware of stuff to work on a regular basis. But I'm always working on this stuff with myself. I am also usually working with someone else on my mindset stuff, meaning that I've hired someone else to use, whether it's Psych K or another technique, to help me with my mindset stuff because I'm in my head all day long and I can't always see this stuff, and I need other people to help me pick apart and get to the root of what it is that's keeping me stuck or holding me back or messing up my mindset. So I honestly think that one of the most effective ways and efficient ways is to train in something yourself that you can use to change your own beliefs and shift your energy, but also work with someone else. And if this sounds expensive, you've got to invest in your business if you want to make it work. And if you want to make it as easy and as inexpensive as possible, honestly, Psych K is really inexpensive. With the basic workshop, you can learn everything you need to balance your beliefs. And in the US, I don't know how much that costs. I'm going to say probably less than $500. In the UK, it's about £350. So honestly, that's really affordable, and it's 2 days of your time, and probably there's a workshop near you. So do that. If you really don't even have that kind of money, or you're not willing to invest, there's EFT videos on YouTube that you can watch for free. You can do tapping. You can do that with yourself. I've not trained in EFT, so I don't know how effective those are compared to training in EFT and doing it yourself. But I found tapping to be really, really useful before I trained in Psych K. That was what I used to use. And I never trained in it. I just did videos and stuff that I had seen online. So there are free ways to do this. There are inexpensive ways to do this. There are super expensive ways of doing this. You can, sign up for a 6-month program with me and work with me for 6 months for £2,495. That's another way to work with your mindset. I honestly think you need to do both. You need to work with someone else and you need to work with yourself. But if you don't have the money, if you don't have the resources, at least work with yourself to get yourself up to the point where you can invest in yourself. You got to do the work. And that requires sometimes money, but also time. So you need to be willing to spend the time to shift your mindset and to do this stuff. So again, the mindset work is all a part of what does it take? Are you willing to do what it takes to build a platform, to get visible, to be super successful in your business? So I hope you have found this useful. If you have any questions, pop into the Facebook group. That's hollyworton.com/group, or send me an email, holly@hollyworton.com. Let me know what you thought about this week's episode. I would love to give you a shout out on the show if you like, or just ask me a question and I will answer it if I can. Are you interested in being a special guest on the Business Mindset podcast? I would love to chat with one of my listeners on a future episode. So I would love to hear about who you are, what you do, how the podcast has helped you in your business, what are your favorite episodes, and how has changing your mindset changed your life and business. Does that sound good? Head over to hollywharton.com/guest and fill out the form. I will be selecting someone in the near future to interview for this show, so I would love to have you. I would also love to have you join my private Facebook group, Business Mindset Alchemists, so we can continue the conversation there. Podcasting is such a one-way conversation, so I would love to get some feedback from you in the group. It's a group dedicated to exploring business mindset and how you can get the mindset you need to achieve your dreams. I would love to see you in there, so go to hollywharton.com/group and you will be redirected to the Facebook group. Finally, whether you've been listening to the show for a while or whether you've just heard your first episode, if you are drawn to learning more about mindset work and you'd like to learn more about how you can work with me, please get in touch or head over to hollywharton.com/call, CALL, and you can book in a call with me to learn more. I would love to work with you and help you transform your mindset. And thank you so much for listening. It means so much to me. I wouldn't be doing this podcast every week, week in and week out for 217 weeks if I didn't know you were listening, if I didn't care that you were listening. Like, I'm so grateful for all of you who are listening to this show, who have put in the time week after week to listen to this. I really, really am grateful. And if you enjoyed this episode, like I said, I would love to have you do a quick review on iTunes. It would mean the world to me. So I'm going to read some really quick reviews that have just come in this week. From I Believe Every Day, she or he says, I love kicking off my day by listening to Holly's podcasts. Her voice is pleasant and she immediately feels like a friend. I appreciate all the aspects of entrepreneurship that she touches on in each of her episodes with practical advice, loads of great questions that get you thinking, and calls to action that inspire you to not just listen, but to actively take steps moving forward in applying that week's focus. I enjoy listening to Holly, whether she's podcasting solo or interviewing a guest. Definitely in my top 3 podcasters to listen to. Thank you so much, I Believe Every Day. I really, really appreciate that, and that's great to hear. I love that I'm part of your morning ritual. We've got another review from Black-Eyed Susan 23 who says, I'm going to echo what someone else wrote, gentle and probing. Holly's interview style is warm and welcoming, but she's not afraid to get right down to the nitty-gritty to get the guests and content her show specializes in. Major kudos. Thank you so much, Black-Eyed Susan 23. So I will be reading these when they pop into my inbox. From now on, thank you so much for your reviews. It really means the world to me. And actually, after reading that first review, I am aware that I did not give you an action step for today's podcast. So here's your action point. Think about, journal on, write on, whatever. Are you willing to do the work it takes to get visible in a big way and build your platform? Are you willing to take the action? Are you willing to do the mindset work? Are you willing to be unique? Are you willing to be consistent? Are you willing to make your business a number 1 priority? Are you willing to let go of perfection? Are you willing to be rejected? Journal on that stuff, think on that stuff, write on that stuff, and then take one action today or tomorrow, depending on what time it is that you're listening to this, to get visible in some way. And if you have any questions, concerns, you're not sure what's the right way to be visible for you, sign up for my Redefining Visibility. It's going to be repackaged as a self-study program. So you can go over to hollywharton.com/RV, and that will get you to the Redefining Visibility sign up form, and you can sign up there. So thank you so much for joining me. Again, I'm going to wrap this up now for real. Remember to visit hollywharton.com/217 for the show notes on this episode, and tune in for next week's episode 218 with the fabulous Stella Orange. We're going to talk about how to experiment with new ways of marketing. It's a great episode and I'm so excited to release this. She has been on my calendar for months. It's taken us a while to get the interview in, and I'm so excited that it's finally going live next week. So be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you can get next week's episode as well. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thanks so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast with your host, Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed at hollywharton.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you.